Elak was a ghost long before he lost his shadow. An artist famed for his vibrant landscapes, he now saw the world in shades of grey. The fire that once drove his brush had dwindled to cold ash. He stood before a canvas, paralyzed by an emptiness that echoed the blank white space before him. His patrons were growing impatient, his debts were mounting, and the woman he loved, Ilara, looked at him with a pity that stung more than any criticism. It was in this desperate silence that a voice, smooth as polished obsidian, first whispered in his studio. "You seek color in a world of dust," the voice said. From the deepest corner of the room, a figure coalesced, a being of shifting twilight and sharp, starlit eyes. He called himself Morian, a tender of forgotten things. He had watched Elak's despair and offered a solution, a bargain as simple as it was seductive. "Give me that which follows you, that useless stain upon the ground, and I will give you inspiration eternal. You will paint not what you see, but what the world feels." Elak looked at his shadow, a formless, loyal blood that had mimicked his every move since birth. A small price for the return of his soul. He agreed without hesitation. In a flicker of cold light, his shadow detached, stretching and folding into Morian's hand before vanishing. Elak felt nothing, only a sudden, electrifying urge to paint. The change was immediate and miraculous. His hands moved with a feverish energy he hadn't felt in years. He painted a sunset over the sea, but it was more than a sunset, it was the warmth of the last light on skin, the sorrow of a day's end, the promise of a new dawn, all bleeding together in impossible color. The art world was set ablaze. Elak was no longer just a painter, he was a conduit for pure emotion. Collectors clamored for his work, and Ilara returned to his side, her eyes wide with awe at the man he had become. But a subtle dread began to creep into the corners of Elak's new, brilliant life. One morning, Ilara laughed, reminding him of their first picnic in the sunken meadows. Elak smiled, but his mind was a blank. He could not recall the meadow, the taste of the wine, or the feeling of her hand in his. He painted a portrait of his mother, a masterpiece that moved viewers to tears, yet he could not remember the sound of her voice. He knew facts, her name, the year she died, but the warmth, the love, the memory, was gone. The suspense tightened like a noose. He would walk through streets he had known his whole life and feel like a stranger. Friends would share stories of their shared past, and Elak would nod along, his heart pounding a rhythm of hollow panic. The audience of his life knew the script, but he, the main actor, had lost his lines. He realized with a terrifying certainty that Morian had not taken a mere shadow. He had taken the vessel of his memories. The dramatic irony was a cruel masterpiece of its own. His paintings were celebrated for their deep emotional resonance, evoking nostalgia, love, and loss in all who saw them. Yet the artist himself felt nothing. He was painting the ghost of a life he could no longer remember, a library of experiences he could no longer read. He was a fraud, and the world adored him for it. The power shift came during a storm. Elak stood in his studio, surrounded by the beautiful, meaningless relics of his past life. He was wealthy, famous, and utterly empty. Rage, a raw and unfamiliar emotion, finally broke through his apathy. He seized the palette knife and slashed at a canvas, not with skill or inspiration, but with pure, agonizing loss. He smeared black and grey paint, carving jagged lines of despair. He painted the void. He painted his own hollowness. When he was done, he stepped back, panting. The painting was hideous, chaotic, and painful to behold. It was also the first honest thing he had created since the bargain. And it was then that Morian appeared, his form shimmering with unease. "What is this?" the god asked, his voice losing its silken edge. He gestured to the chaotic canvas. "This feeling, it is not from your past. It is not one of the memories I hold. It is what I have now," Elak said, his voice steady. "It is what you left me with." Morian, who had been luxuriating in the vibrant tapestry of Elak's life, first love, childhood joys, quiet moments of contentment, felt a strange, chilling pull from the painting. For the first time, the god felt a flicker of something new, something he hadn't acquired. He had Elak's past, but Elak was creating a present that the god could not comprehend. The mortal, in his utter desolation, had found a power beyond memory. He could create meaning from nothingness. Awe, and a sliver of envy, flickered in the god's starlit eyes. The final confrontation was not a battle, but a negotiation. Elak, no longer a desperate artist but a man who had stared into the abyss and survived, did not beg for his memories back. "You have my life," Elak said. "But you only have what was. You can replay my joy, but you cannot create it. I can. Even from this," he gestured to his bleak painting, "I can build something new. You have a collection of beautiful, dead things. I have a future." He offered the god a new bargain. "Return my shadow, empty. In exchange, I will teach you the one thing a god like you can never know, what it means to start over. I will teach you to feel the ache of a blank canvas and the triumph of the first mark." Morian, the keeper of endings, was being offered a beginning. Intrigued by this mortal's resilience, by a power born not of magic but of the sheer will to endure, the god agreed. With a sigh that sounded like rustling leaves, he pulled the shadow from his being, no longer a simple, dark shape, but a shimmering, translucent film, wiped clean of all it had held. It flowed back to Elak's feet, anchoring him to the world once more. Elak stood whole again, a stranger to himself. He had lost the memories of the man he was, of the love he'd felt and the beauty he'd seen. But the emptiness was no longer a void of despair. It was a space of possibility. He looked at Ilara, not with the weight of a shared past, but with the simple, terrifying, and thrilling prospect of a new hello. He had learned the ultimate lesson: a life is not defined by the shadows of the past, but by the light one chooses to walk into, moment by moment, creating a new story with every step. The ending was not a return to what was lost, but the satisfying, hopeful beginning of a masterpiece yet to be painted.